You've been strong for too long, silent, composed, seemingly unshaken. But beneath that calm surface, a silent struggle, a quiet weight few understand. They told you to man up, so maybe silence became your default and armor became your burden. You keep going, enduring, perhaps feeling inwardly fragile while outwardly controlled, whispering, "I've got this." Here's the Stoic truth. The more you fight reality or suppress your internal responses without understanding, the more inner peace you lose. That's not strength, it's friction. And what truly disturbs your tranquility isn't the external event itself. It's often your judgment about it, the unexamined beliefs within you. That internal reaction, it's not a weakness, it's a signal, a call for awareness, not avoidance. This video isn't just motivation. It's about building inner freedom and resilience. Not by building thicker walls, but by cultivating an unshakable inner citadel through reason, self-awareness, and acceptance of what you cannot change. Finding strength not despite the storm, but through understanding your role within it. You'll learn how to become mentally composed and truly unshakable. How to master your reactions through disciplined thought. How to distinguish clearly between what is and isn't within your control. How to protect your inner peace with wisdom, virtue, and perspective. You are not alone in seeking this clarity. If you're tired of being tossed by external events or internal turmoil and ready for a deeper strength, this is your starting point. Like the video, subscribe, share it with someone seeking clarity and inner calm. Let's begin. Because your tranquility is your highest possession. And soon you'll understand. Nothing external can truly harm your inner self. Unless your own judgment allows it. 1. It's not them. It's what's still bleeding in you. A stranger looks at you the wrong way. Your boss makes a sarcastic remark in front of the team. A friend says something that sounds like a joke, but it hits you harder than it should. You nod, you smile, you carry on. But hours later, you're still thinking about it. Still replaying it in your head. Still feeling it under your skin like a slow burn. It's easy to react with blame. Why would they say that? What's their problem? We point fingers, we shift attention outward, because it's easier than looking inside. But the truth is never found in the surface-level conflict. It lies beneath it, in the space where your guard doesn't reach. That sharp sting, that boiling frustration, it wasn't born from the moment, it was awakened by it. Because when something on the outside cuts too deep, it usually means there's a wound inside that never closed. The Stoics taught that no external event can disturb the soul unless the soul allows it. They didn't say this to dismiss emotion. They said it to expose the real battlefield within. It's not the insult that breaks you, it's the echo. That insult lands on a scar, a memory, a fear, a belief about your worth. And if you haven't faced it, it still bleeds. Picture this. You're walking through a crowded room. Someone accidentally bumps your shoulder. If your shoulder's healthy, you keep walking. But if there's a fresh wound there, even a gentle nudge sends you reeling. That's how emotional wounds work. You think people are hurting you, but most of the time, they're bumping into something that's already broken. Here's where it gets deeper. Most men have been taught to ignore emotional pain, to power through, to silence the hurt. And so they carry these open wounds through life without ever acknowledging them. Every slight, every rejection, every critique starts to feel like an attack. Not because it is, but because the internal system is on high alert. Survival mode. But you can't heal in survival mode, you can only react. And reaction is not freedom. It's slavery dressed as masculinity. Real strength is not built by acting like you're invincible. It's built by knowing exactly where you're vulnerable and doing something about it. Not hiding it, not suppressing it. Facing it with awareness, not dramatizing the pain, not indulging in it, but owning it. Observing it like a warrior would observe his enemy, calmly, precisely, without fear. Let me give you a real-world example. A man loses his temper because his partner criticizes how he speaks in public. But that anger isn't really about her words. It's about his father who used to humiliate him at the dinner table. It's about a pattern he never faced, a belief he swallowed whole. I'm not good enough. She didn't break him. She unknowingly pointed to a scar he never healed. And his reaction, it wasn't a defense of pride. It was a flare of pain. So what do we do with this? How does a man stop bleeding on people who didn't wound him? Start with silence, not to shut down, but to listen inward. When something triggers you, pause. Don't speak. Don't defend. Don't try to fix it. Just feel. Ask yourself, what did that wake up in me? What story did it activate? The more honest you are in that moment, the less control that wound has over you. Then, practice writing it down. No filters, no performance. Put the emotion on paper. Clarity often begins with handwriting. It slows down the noise and gives shape to the chaos. When the internal story is visible, it can be challenged. You begin to ask, is this still true? Is this pain current or carried? That's the beginning of awareness. That's when you stop reacting and start reclaiming your mind. And more importantly, build your mind daily. The Stoics didn't wait for peace. They trained for it. Journaling, cold exposure, saying no when it's hard, practicing restraint when your ego wants to speak. These are not trendy habits. They're weapons. They build inner steel so that when life presses, you don't shatter. You hold. You observe. You act only when it's aligned with your values, not your wounds. Because in the end, a man who doesn't know his pain will always be ruled by it. They'll think the world is against him when in truth, it's just revealing where he hasn't done the work. But when you face your pain, something shifts. The insult no longer stings, the glance no longer cuts, the joke no longer lingers, because there's nothing inside left to echo. Just presence, just silence, just calm. That's not weakness. That's emotional self-mastery. That's resilience without rage. Strength without noise, power without reaction. That's what it means to live by Stoic discipline. And from that place, nothing and nobody can truly hurt you again. Not because the world has changed, but because you did. 2. Control nothing. Command everything within. There's a calm that comes when you stop needing everything to go your way. A quiet, grounded strength, not built from things working out, but from no longer being owned by outcomes. That's the freedom most men spend their lives chasing in all the wrong places. They try to control people, situations, opinions. They overthink every move and replay every word, trying to protect themselves from pain by predicting the world. But the world doesn't bend for anyone. And the more you try to control it, the more it controls you. At first, control feels like a shield. You plan your image, you anticipate judgment, you speak carefully, act strategically, always calculating. You think it's discipline. But what it really is fear in disguise. You're not leading your life. You're managing anxiety. And that's why your peace is so fragile. Why one delay, one insult, one unexpected shift leaves you off balance for days. Because deep down, you're still bargaining with reality. If I do this right, maybe I won't get hurt. But life doesn't trade in guarantees. It never has. The Stoics never promised control. In fact, they warned against it. What they taught instead was the power of detachment. Not apathy, but clarity. Not coldness, but command. They divided life into 2 categories, what's within you and what's not. Everything outside, other people's choices, outcomes, circumstances, even your own reputation, belongs to the second category. Waste your energy trying to dominate those things, and you'll stay exhausted. Turn inward, though, your thoughts, your responses, your perspective, and you'll discover where your true power lives. Imagine standing on a cliff edge as the wind howls. You can scream at the sky. You can blame the gusts, or you can steady your footing. You can plant yourself deeper into the rock. You don't control the storm, you control your stance. That's the Stoic way. That's how you stop being tossed around by life. By anchoring inside yourself, not by demanding the sky go still. Think of the man who loses his job unexpectedly. He panics, calls everyone, sends resumes in a frenzy. His thoughts spiral. What will they think? What if I don't recover? Another man in the same situation sits in silence for a moment. Not because he's careless, but because he knows reaction without reflection is weakness. He breathes, he journals, he reassesses his path. He controls nothing about the external event, but everything about his internal position. One man flails, the other repositions. That is control, not of the world, but of the self. And this doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you act from a place of grounded intention, not emotional panic. It means replacing the question, how do I make this go my way, with what response keeps me in alignment. That's the shift. That's when your decisions stop being emotional landmines and start becoming acts of strength. Not loud, not reactive, but precise. This is not theory, it's practice, and you build it by choosing your response daily. When someone disrespects you, hold the silence, not to shrink, but to maintain power. When plans fall apart, adjust calmly. Not to deny the impact, but to protect your energy. When you feel triggered, don't react out of habit. Pause, step back, name what's happening inside. When the mind is about to spiral, remind it, this moment doesn't own me, I do. You can train for this. You don't need a perfect life. You need rituals that sharpen your discipline, cold showers that teach you not to flinch, daily journaling that clarifies your thoughts, limiting social noise so you can hear yourself think, saying no more often so your yes means something, walking in silence, lifting weight without music. These are acts of self-command. Each one strengthens your foundation so that when life moves unpredictably, as it always does, you don't. Because the truth is, you've never needed the world to behave for you to be okay. You've only needed to stop trying to bend it. What hurts is not the chaos outside, but the attachment to how you wanted it to go. Let go of that attachment and you free yourself, not from difficulty, but from helplessness. That's where real peace begins. Not in a life without discomfort, but in a mind that doesn't flinch. And that kind of mind doesn't come from comfort. It comes from confrontation. Daily. Quiet, inner confrontation. You don't win that battle by controlling more. You win it by surrendering what was never yours and commanding what always was. Your attention, your choices, your clarity. So stop trying to script the world. That's not your role. Instead, become immovable inside it. Become the kind of man who doesn't panic when the plan shifts. The kind of man who can be calm in chaos, disciplined in emotion, and free from the disease of needing everything to go right. Because once you stop needing control, you gain command. And from that place, no man, no event, no storm can take your peace away. Not because they've changed, but because you finally have. 3. Face the unseen, or be ruled by it. Some of the most powerful men in history were not the loudest in the room. They were the quietest. Calm eyes, measured breath, the kind of presence that doesn't demand attention but commands it. What gave them that power wasn't luck, and it wasn't fake confidence. It was clarity. Clarity is earned through fire by confronting the chaos inside instead of chasing order outside. That same power is already in you. Not something to acquire, but something buried beneath distraction, noise, and the illusion of control. What you haven't faced will always find a way to control you. It doesn't matter how strong your discipline looks on the outside. If your mind is full of unresolved noise, anger, fear, resentment, it will rise the moment life presses you. The more you ignore what lives in the dark, the more it shapes your reality without permission. Not because you're weak, but because your unconscious does not sleep. It doesn't matter how successful you are, how respected, how physically strong. It only cares about what you've refused to face. And when you're not looking, it steers your reactions, ruins your peace, and repeats your worst patterns. A Stoic does not fear what's hidden. He makes it visible. He enters the cave instead of walking around it. Because what he avoids today will own him tomorrow. The truth is this, your anger doesn't come out of nowhere. Your jealousy isn't irrational. Your self-sabotage isn't random. These are not flaws. They are signals, smoke from a fire that still burns beneath the surface. And no matter how hard you try to suppress them, they will keep rising until you stop running and start listening. Think of a man who explodes when someone questions his authority. He says he's just defending his boundaries, but what's really happening is a buried fear of being dismissed. That fear has roots. Maybe a father who never listened, maybe years of being overlooked. Whatever the source, the man isn't reacting to this moment. He's reacting to the accumulation of moments never resolved. His power wasn't stolen. It was handed away, every time he avoided the truth that still stings. Or picture a man who can't enjoy success. Each time he reaches a goal, he feels empty again. He moves to the next, and the next, hoping fulfillment will meet him at the finish line. But the satisfaction never lasts. Because it's not the goal that's missing, it's the wound he's trying to outrun. And no victory will heal what he refuses to examine. That's the trap. That's how the unseen rules your life. Not with obvious destruction, but with quiet erosion. The Stoic path begins when you stop blaming external chaos and start confronting internal confusion. It doesn't mean overanalyzing everything. It means creating space between what happens and how you respond. That space is where awareness lives, and awareness is where freedom begins. This is not poetic, this is tactical. Start by sitting in silence each day, not scrolling, not numbing, just sitting. Let discomfort surface. Don't argue with it, don't label it. Just observe. Watch what thoughts come up when you stop running. You'll meet the parts of yourself you've denied. That's the work. That's what Stoics practiced, not cold detachment, but clear observation. Write down what disturbs you most. Trace it back. Ask why it holds so much weight. Ask what you're really afraid of. Most men never ask these questions, and so they never understand why their habits repeat. They spend their lives reacting, convinced it's circumstance. But the Stoic knows it's not the trigger, it's the unexamined self. When a man walks around ruled by what he refuses to face, his strength is an illusion. He may look in control, but one wrong word exposes him. He may seem respected, but his mind is chaotic. But when that same man walks into the fire willingly, when he shines a light on the parts of himself he spent years hiding, he becomes something else. Not immune to life, but unfazed by it. Not hard, but solid. Grounded like stone. Present like a mountain. The storm may come, but it no longer moves him. That is the kind of strength the world respects without words. Not the man who speaks the most, but the one who doesn't flinch when the silence arrives. That man has nothing left to prove, because he has nothing left to hide. His shadows are not enemies. They're allies, integrated, known, and so nothing from the outside can use them against him. Don't just be strong on the outside. Be clean on the inside. Take daily action to confront what lingers. Meditate without distraction. Journal without filters. Respond to irritation with stillness, not instinct. Watch yourself like a warrior watches the edge of his blade, always sharp, always aware, never careless. Let your awareness be your weapon. Let your mind become the space no chaos can enter. Because once you've seen the shadows and survived their truth, no insult, no loss, no failure can take you down. The world may still strike, but you will no longer fall. Not because pain disappears, but because your foundation no longer cracks where you've already done the work. This is not a comforting philosophy. It's a hard road, but it leads somewhere real. And when you finally stop running from what's buried, you stop being ruled by it. That's not just strength, that's sovereignty. 4. Don't build walls. Build wholeness. A man at peace doesn't hide behind armor. He doesn't need to. What he's built inside makes him unshakable. Not because he's numb to the world, but because he knows himself so well that nothing on the outside can catch him off guard. That's the kind of strength most men crave, but few achieve. Not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet certainty that comes from inner integration. For too long, men have been told to toughen up, shut it down, and keep moving. So they build walls, they tell themselves they don't care, they master the poker face, they play the role, and on the surface it works. They become untouchable, but not in the way that heals. It's the kind of untouchable that isolates, the kind that slowly eats you from within while the world applauds your composure. The result isn't power, it's disconnection. When you numb the pain, you don't just kill the suffering, you kill the sensitivity that helps you feel alive. And over time, you forget how to access what's real. You react, not from clarity, but from confusion. You stay in relationships that drain you because your mask won't let you admit you're not okay. You say, I'm good, even when your chest feels like it's caving in. You stop trusting your own signals. That's not Stoicism. That's self-abandonment dressed in discipline. True Stoic power doesn't come from denying emotion. It comes from understanding it, sitting with it, letting it speak without letting it rule. The Stoics never taught men to suppress. They taught them to see clearly, to recognize what's theirs and what isn't, what must be accepted and what must be changed. To build a mind like a fortress, not a prison. A man who feels deeply but remains unmoved is not weak, he is forged. Imagine a blacksmith shaping steel. The fire doesn't destroy the blade, it tempers it. But only if the blade stays in long enough. Only if it doesn't get yanked out the second it starts to burn. That's how emotional mastery is built. You don't get stronger by avoiding discomfort. You get stronger by staying in the fire without losing form. That's how walls come down. Not through collapse, but through conscious removal, one brick at a time. Now picture a man walking into a room full of people. He smiles, he shakes hands, he laughs at the right jokes, but behind his eyes is a fatigue that no one sees. He's tired not from life itself, but from performing through it. His armor isn't protection anymore, it's weight, and he knows it. He just doesn't know who he is without it. That's the trap. You build a persona to survive a moment, and then you live decades trying to maintain it. The cost? Yourself. But there's another way, a way to live without pretending. It starts by dropping the act, not all at once, but piece by piece. You notice when you're faking the laugh. You catch yourself when you're people-pleasing out of fear, not respect. You allow yourself to feel anger without letting it bleed into aggression. You recognize sadness without collapsing into victimhood. You let things be what they are, without shame. And this kind of awareness? It's built. It's trained. Start small. Practice daily stillness. 5 minutes in silence, no distractions. Let your mind surface what it's been avoiding. No judgment, just notice. Then, write. Journal without polish. Say what you actually think. Get to the root, not what sounds good, but what feels true. This clarity is how walls dissolve. Because once the inside is clear, the outside no longer feels like a threat. Next, stop outsourcing your worth. Pay attention to how often you act based on how others might perceive you. When you catch yourself doing that, pause. Ask, what am I avoiding by trying to look strong? The more often you ask that, the more you remember who you are beneath the armor. And finally, do hard things without needing recognition. Train when no one's watching. Tell the truth when it's uncomfortable. Say no without over-explaining. Each of these moments is a strike against the mask. Each one makes you real again. Not perfect, not polished, but present. Because here's the truth. Nothing can hurt the man who no longer fears being seen. The man who has embraced both strength and softness, both fire and stillness, both flaw and purpose. He doesn't flinch because he doesn't fake. He doesn't explode because he's no longer suppressing. He doesn't run because he's already returned to himself. This isn't about tearing down everything at once. It's about building something deeper in its place. Integration. Wholeness. The kind of internal alignment that no criticism can penetrate and no praise can manipulate. The kind that remains solid when everything else around it shifts. So don't build walls. They only trap what you're trying to protect. Build clarity instead. Build the kind of presence that can stand in any room without shrinking, without proving, without pretending. That's the real armor. Not something that hides your weakness, but something that reveals your strength. Because once you stop hiding from yourself, the world loses its power to shake you. And in that silence, you remember what it means to be whole. 5. Pain speaks when you're ready to rise. Some moments don't break you, they wake you. Not all pain is punishment. Sometimes it's permission to stop pretending, to stop enduring in silence, to finally confront what you've buried. Growth doesn't start when everything's perfect. It begins the moment you're forced to stand still and feel what you've spent years avoiding. That's not a weakness. That's the signal you're finally strong enough to face it. Pain has its own language. It doesn't use words. It uses silence, fatigue, distraction, tight shoulders, and sleepless nights. You think it's random, but it's intelligent. It knows where you've been wounded, and it won't stop speaking until you stop running. Most men weren't taught how to hear it. They were taught how to shut it down, power through, drink it off, laugh it off, or worse, carry it like a badge. But Stoicism doesn't tell you to ignore pain. It teaches you to translate it, to look it in the eye, to learn what it wants from you and why it's still here. Avoided pain doesn't disappear. It transforms into anxiety, into rage, into self-sabotage. And if you don't stop, it digs tunnels beneath your discipline. Then one day, you explode at something small. You panic at a minor shift. You burn bridges you didn't mean to. Not because you're unstable, but because you never acknowledged what's been trying to surface. The wound wants your attention. Not pity. Not drama. Just awareness. A Stoic understands this. He doesn't fear pain. He studies it. He knows suffering is the price of resisting truth. And he stops resisting. That doesn't mean he enjoys suffering. It means he doesn't flinch when it arrives. He doesn't reach for distraction. He doesn't curse the world. He sits, breathes, listens. Because in that silence, something opens. Not all at once, but enough to begin reclaiming what was lost. Picture a man alone in his truck at night, engine off, hands still on the wheel. He just got the call. His marriage is over. He doesn't scream. He doesn't beg. He doesn't scroll through a list of what ifs. He stares into the dark windshield and he lets it hit. Not the story, not the drama, the raw weight of what is. That is the fire. And how he meets it will shape the man he becomes. He can harden or he can deepen. That's the line. And Stoicism leads him inward, not to escape, but to rebuild from the ground up. Pain is not a problem to fix. It's a message to decode. Every ache has a name. Every pattern has a root. The anger that keeps returning, it's protecting something. The sadness you've numbed for years, it's holding something sacred. The resistance to stillness, it's fear of what you'll feel when the noise stops. That's where discipline must go. Not just into routines and reps, but into the emotional terrain you've ignored. Begin with stillness. No music, no scrolling. Sit in the raw discomfort. Breathe through it. Ask what it wants, not what your ego says, what your body says. Write it down, uncensored. No edits. Let it be ugly. Let it be real. That's how emotional toughness is forged. Not by suppressing, but by naming the storm. Next, track your reactions. What makes you snap? What drains you? What patterns repeat? Don't judge. Just observe. Behind each one is a wound, and behind each wound is a choice you haven't made yet. To finally feel or to keep running. The Stoic chooses to feel, not to be overwhelmed, but to become immune to manipulation. To stop being dragged by the past and start moving from presence. Now take action, not reaction. Practice delayed response. When someone cuts deep, don't strike, don't collapse. Pause. See the pain. Don't let it decide your behavior. That is real power, stillness when everything inside wants chaos. Cold water teaches this. Weighted carries teach this. Saying no without guilt teaches this. You're not escaping pain. You're refining your capacity to carry it with clarity. Because here's the truth. The pain you keep avoiding will wait. It's patient. It'll wait through promotions, through relationships, through achievements. But one day it will knock again. And the longer you delay, the louder it becomes. Not to punish you, but to liberate you. If you face it now, you walk lighter. You become sharper, more present, more free. Not because the pain is gone, but because it no longer owns your reaction. This isn't about therapy. It's about truth. About becoming so grounded in your awareness that nothing can hijack your mind. Not old wounds. Not outside noise. Not even your own fear. You won't find this power in books alone. You'll find it when you sit with your discomfort and stop making excuses. Because once you stop fearing your pain, you stop being defined by it. And in that space, you rise. 6. Tear off who you pretend to be. A man becomes dangerous the moment he stops performing. Not when he gets louder, but when he gets honest. When he no longer needs applause to feel secure. When he no longer needs validation to feel real. That's when presence sharpens. When everything soft and scattered inside finally hardens into form. Not armor, but truth. A truth that doesn't shout. A truth that doesn't chase. A truth that stands where it is, unmoved by noise. Most men are actors in their own lives, playing roles crafted in childhood, polished in society, and reinforced through survival. The strong one, the silent one, the successful one, the one who never complains, the one who always has it together. But the problem with roles is this. You start to believe the mask is who you are, and the more you perfect the act, the further you drift from your core. The applause grows, but your connection to yourself fades. And that disconnection? It's the quiet killer. The Stoics understood this. They warned against living through the eyes of others. They urged men to stop chasing appearances and start building substance. Because the moment you need to be seen a certain way, you've already given your power away. You're no longer living, you're managing perception. That's not strength, that's slavery. Think of a suit of armor left out in the rain. It looks solid, impenetrable. But underneath, the man inside is soaked, shivering, and slowly breaking down. That's what performance does. On the outside, polished. On the inside, rusted. You keep showing up, but not as yourself. You keep speaking, but the words aren't yours. You nod through meetings, you smile through tension, you pretend through exhaustion. And at night, when the lights go out, you realize the hardest part of your day wasn't work. It was keeping the act alive. That's the moment when men either break or wake up. This is where the Stoic path demands a different response. Not collapse, not withdrawal, but confrontation. With yourself, with the image you built to survive. That version of you that made sense once, maybe in school, maybe in your first job, maybe in a relationship where you had to walk on eggshells. It kept you safe. It got you through. But now it's choking you. The act must end if the man is to emerge. Tearing off the mask isn't dramatic. It's deliberate. It begins in silence. You sit down. You breathe. You let the roles rise one by one. The need to impress. The need to win every argument. The need to be respected by people who don't even know you. The need to seem untouchable. And as they rise, you don't shame them. You just acknowledge that you created them out of necessity. And now it's time to let them go. That kind of shedding isn't weakness, it's rebirth. In the Stoic sense, this is individuation, a return to self. Not the self others expect, but the one forged in solitude and tested in stillness. The one not controlled by identity, but centered in reality. It's not about becoming better, it's about becoming real. From this place, the work begins. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You stop chasing conversations that drain you. You stop apologizing for being direct. You speak less, but when you do, your words land. You listen deeper, not to respond, but to understand. You train your mind to stay when it wants to run. You remind your body daily through discipline, cold exposure, journaling, solitude, that comfort is not the goal. Clarity is. This clarity becomes your edge. It sharpens how you move, how you walk into a room, how you handle silence, how you respond to conflict. You no longer need to prove anything, because nothing inside is in hiding. That's the strength people feel before you speak. It's not the energy you push, it's the energy you no longer leak. Imagine a fire in a forge, contained, focused, unshaken by wind. That's the stoic presence of a man who has shed the costume. He's not performative, he's pure. People don't admire him because he's impressive. They trust him because he's congruent. He's not trying to seem calm, he is. Not trying to seem disciplined, he is. Not trying to seem free, he is. This is what happens when you stop managing perception and start living from the essence. And yes, people will notice. Some will back away. They were attached to the mask. They never met you. They met your performance. Let them leave. That's not loss. That's alignment. The ones who remain, the ones who show up after the mask drops, those are the people who meet the real you. And more importantly, that's the moment you meet yourself again. Not the version built for applause, but the one forged in fire. The one who can be alone in a quiet room and feel whole. So take off the mask. Piece by piece, it served its purpose. But now you have a different mission. One that doesn't require approval, only awareness. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Present enough to notice when you're faking. Present enough to speak from the gut. Present enough to say, this is me, without needing the world to clap. Because once the act ends, the work begins. And from that moment on, you're finally free. 7. Nothing protects you like knowing yourself. A man who knows himself doesn't flinch. He doesn't need to raise his voice or prove his worth. His stillness speaks louder than most people's shouting. That kind of presence isn't built in public, it's earned in solitude. It's not the result of luck, status, or applause. It comes from doing the quiet work others avoid. The work of self-awareness. The discipline of sitting with your mind when it's uncomfortable. The strength to face what's raw without hiding, fixing, or fleeing. And once you've done that, no insult can cut deep, no praise can make you soft, and no loss can shake your core. Most men spend their lives reacting, not to what happens, but to what it means to them. Someone disrespects you and you explode. A small rejection and you spiral. But it's not about the moment, it's about the identity you've attached to it. When you don't know yourself, everything feels like a threat. You spend your life guarding a version of you that you don't even trust. You walk on edge because any false step might expose how unstable the inside really is. That's why clarity is your greatest defense. Not perfection, not bravado, just the unshakable certainty of knowing who you are and who you're not. That clarity cuts through confusion. It silences overthinking. It makes your decisions faster, your reactions cleaner, and your focus sharper. You stop needing people to validate you because your own awareness already told you what matters. You stop fearing being misunderstood because you're no longer seeking to be seen. You're simply living in alignment. The Stoics saw this clearly. They didn't chase the image. They cultivated essence. Know thyself, not as an abstract ideal, but as a tactical advantage. When you understand your triggers, your patterns, and your internal language, you become difficult to manipulate. The world loses its grip on you because it no longer knows where to press. And when you're unshakable inside, you become untouchable outside. Not because you avoid the hits, but because you've already reinforced what matters. Imagine a fortress built not of stone, but of self-knowledge. No guard at the gate, no weapons drawn, just stillness. Because nothing outside that wall has the power to intrude. That's what real security feels like. It's not built from what you show the world. It's built from what you refuse to hide from yourself. You don't need to intimidate. You don't need to impress. You just need to stop running from what's already inside and learn how to sit with it until it no longer threatens you. Picture this. A man stands alone in the woods before dawn. No phone, no music, no distractions. He's not meditating. He's watching, listening, tracking his thoughts like a hunter tracks movement in the trees. Each one was examined without judgment, noticed, named, released. That stillness isn't passive, it's war without noise. A daily confrontation with the mind's chaos until it bends to discipline. That man walks back into the world differently. Not louder, not prouder, but clearer, sharper, centered. That's what self-awareness does. It resets your nervous system. It strips away the false urgency. It frees you from chasing things that never belonged to you. The more you understand yourself, the less you fall for distractions, for drama, for external bait. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't ready to understand. You stop chasing approval from people who've never done their own inner work. And slowly, your life simplifies. Not because the world changes, but because your lens does. Now take that clarity and weaponize it. Use it to train your attention. When thoughts spiral, cut the loop. Ask, is this real or a projection? When emotion spikes, zoom out. Ask, is this mine or borrowed? When you feel triggered, pause. Track where it lands in your body. Trace it to its origin. You'll find most of your reactions have nothing to do with what just happened, and everything to do with what's unresolved in you. But awareness gives you a choice, and the choice is where power lives. That's why the most stoic man in the room isn't the one who feels nothing. He's the one who sees everything and still chooses not to be moved. He sees the insult, hears the gossip, senses the tension, and lets it pass. Not because he's detached, but because he's anchored. He knows what's his, and more importantly, he knows what isn't. So train like that. Build rituals that sharpen your inner mirror. Journal daily. Not to impress, but to strip away confusion. Reflect before bed, not with guilt, but with precision. Catch yourself drifting into noise and pull yourself back without apology. Make stillness your default. Make clarity your edge. Because once you've mapped your mind, the world stops feeling so chaotic. And the more you know your terrain, the harder it becomes for anything or anyone to invade it. The path to becoming untouchable is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. You've now seen that pain, rejection, criticism, they only cut deep when they touch something unresolved within. And that's not a weakness. It's simply a sign of where your real work begins. True strength is built in silence, through daily self-awareness and emotional discipline. It's in the choice to respond rather than react, to pause rather than explode, to observe your own thoughts without letting them drive your actions. Every trigger is a teacher. Every wound is a doorway, and your willingness to face them is what makes you unstoppable, not in the eyes of others, but in the truth you carry within yourself. The Stoic lives by mastery, not mood. He trains his energy. He protects his mental clarity. He sharpens his presence like a blade, not for show, but for life. This isn't about perfection. It's about practice. And practice starts now. So ask yourself daily, what disturbed me today, and why? What did I avoid feeling? What story am I still telling myself that no longer serves me? Use that awareness. Apply it. Let it guide your words, your posture, and your decisions. Let it shape a life that is disciplined, grounded, and free from emotional chaos. Because once you master your mind, no one can control your peace again. If this message resonates with your journey, share your story in the comments. Tell us where you've struggled. Tell us how you're learning to protect your energy, to stay centered, to stop being ruled by the noise. You're not alone, and this is just the beginning. Your peace is earned in practice, one thought at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time.